if we look at the first case where it was still going on, so as the disaster happens, there is a loss of identity. People, the story of the organization doesn't work anymore. So you get a rupture, and it goes together with a certain sense of loss of identity. And that seems to go together with a high risk perception. At that time, people are receptive in an open sense to many risks, not just this one disaster, but there might be other stuff going on as well. So they're anxious then to hear frank truths, even using language and categories outside of that old story, which doesn't seem to work anymore. But then you get a reorganization, new procedures, etc., and identity is strengthened again, and it's reinvented. You get a new story of the organization. And as that happens, the risk perception wanes off, and the death effect becomes more likely again. It was very obvious in the third case with the disaster happening 15 years ago. They thought they had a good procedure, an open culture, but when we brought them the news that was someone saying it's not an open culture, they couldn't hear that. All they wanted to know was who said that. That can't be true. So you get a death effect. They're wiping it off the table. So the suggestion is that time, the time dimension, makes not every de-escalation technique as effective. And so we get this kind of model. So if the question would be, can we organize courage? Well, you get a number of things that you would need for effective internal whistleblowing policies. Right? The bottom half, the ones at the top, are things that you can organize, and these things, a number of these things come from these de-escalation tools that are mentioned in the de-escalation literature on IT project and engineering projects. For example, you can make it a role prescription that people bring bad news, such as error reporting, near misses, etc. Another thing that you can organize is you can organize the exit champion. You can organize that if someone stops a project, has that courage, because the project is a disaster and someone has the courage to pull the plug, you actually communicate about that. And you say, like, look, this is fantastic. This took a lot of courage, but it's been a good decision. And you communicate that within your organization. You can organize that. Another element is that you can organize reports of critique. Again, there's different ways of doing it, either role prescribed, or you can organize a channel through which people can report critique. You can organize a platform variety in those leading or overseeing a project, or you can make sure that there are people with different backgrounds, or that projects get discussed at different platforms by different groups of people. You can plan to review a policy, or you can plan milestones. This happens. You can plan milestones in projects to say, well, if we haven't met this deadline, or if we haven't made that target, then we are going to stop the project. You can do that with any policy. You can plan a review of the policy. That you can organize. You can also organize that you're going to seek various expertise. You could even bring people from the outside in to advise, to scrutinize, to critique, to play devil's advocate. You can organize that. The bottom half are things that seem important to avoid this time effect happening, which we find much more difficult to organize. And it seems like that remains part of the characteristic of an individual, of personality, if you want. And these things come from Weick's work on the resilient organization. For example, you need people who can restrain their desire to focus on the person and keep the focus on the concern, on what is being raised. You need people who can, despite the time pressure and despite the amount of information coming at them, can still maintain a good attention for detail. Sometimes it's in the detail that a risk or a disaster is announced. You need people who are reluctant to oversimplify things, even though all the reports they give have executive summaries, have nice diagrams, etc. But you need a personality that's reluctant, that is fearful of oversimplifying things. And you need people that are able to maintain a sensitivity for what's happening on the work floor, regardless of how high up they are in their organization. So where we are now, and coming from these it's a limited study just on 3 cases in 3 organizations. What it suggests is that, can we organize courage? Well, this is the model we have now. And so what we want to do is go out and test that model on more cases and more organizations. And those are the slides, and you have my contact email. That's my talk. So here you see links to that, to the SSRN page where you'll find that paper. Thanks for your attention.